Alex here with a legal nuts and bolts video on jury trials. I never represented myself in a jury trial. I did have one opportunity to do so, so I did do a little bit of research on it, but in the end I decided that it would be more advantageous to my opponent's attorney than it would to me, so I decided to just opt for a bench trial. At that point I'd been pretty comfortable with winning appeals, so I wasn't that afraid of just having a single judge decide my case. And so I'm going to do the best that I can on this video, but because I didn't personally go through all of the processes associated with a jury trial, all I can really give you is a little bit of information that I found out when I did my own research, and of course that's only specific to Nevada anyway. So that being said, I'll just go straight into it. One of the biggest confusions people have is they think that the Constitution gives all of us a right to a jury trial anytime we want, and somehow that right was taken away from us. It's not true. From what I've read, we got the whole notion of jury trials from England. And when the American colonies rebelled and issued the Declaration of Independence and became their own country, a lot of the practices of English law were sort of incorporated into American law. Not all of them, but probably most of them. One of them was jury trials. And again, we got it from, the notion of the jury trial came from England, and so the practices of the jury trial came from England too. And if you read the Constitution carefully, you'll see that there are little tiny details in the way that the right to a trial by jury is explained. And rather than go into all that little nitty-gritty technical stuff, I'll just say what I've found from my reading. From what I've looked at, there is a right to a trial by jury only in certain situations. You have to be facing a substantial amount of time in jail if it's a criminal case. My understanding is at least a year or more. So I think that's felonies. All felonies are a year or more. And I don't think it's jail. In fact, I think it's prison. In those situations, you're entitled to demand a trial by jury, but in any other situation, you're not. So if it's just like jaywalking or like a traffic ticket or, I don't know, like a battery where you're facing like 6 months or something like that, you're not entitled to a jury trial. It was never the case from the beginning of America. The other situation is civil lawsuits are also limited. So I guess they call these cases at law. Cases where you sue for money damages, you're entitled to a jury trial in those cases, but you're not in any other cases. I think the other cases are called suits in chancery. And in those cases, what you're trying to get the court to give you is some kind of what they call equitable relief. So it's not money damages. It's pretty much anything that's not money damages is equitable relief. Those types of cases, no jury trial. And again, it's not something that was taken away. It's just something that just was never the case from the beginning. So there's all kinds of reasons behind this stuff, but I'm not going to go into that. If people want to figure out all the reasons behind it, they can do all the research. That being said, I will mention that some states have created the right to a trial by jury in a manner that's not consistent with the, well, I don't want to use inconsistent because that's kind of negative. Sort of as an extra right on top of what the Constitution of the United States offers. So like in Texas, for example, you can demand a jury trial in a divorce action. I'm not sure if you can do it in like just a regular old child custody case. I'm not going to even look into any of that. If anyone is here from Texas and they want to give details, please feel free to do so in the comments below. The point I was trying to make is that in some states, they have created the right to a jury trial in another type of situation. It's not something that the Constitution of the United States created. The state on its own went and did that. So it's just them going above and beyond. There are a few things I want to go into when it comes to jury trials. In Nevada, if you're entitled to a trial by jury, you need to look at the court rules to see how to go about triggering that process. My understanding is that you file something known as the demand for jury trial. I don't think it's a very long paper. I'm sure it's just probably a 1 or 2 page piece of paper saying that you demand it. And you probably have to post a fee. I'm not sure what they call it. There's a name for it, but I think it's $300. It may be more. I'm not going to put that stuff in this video because even if I'm right now, it'll change later and then it's going to just mislead people. Look into that. Look into if you have to file the jury demand by checking the court rules and checking the dollar amount, because the dollar amount probably will change, and I'm sure it changes probably every 3 or 4 years, maybe every 5 years. Once you file the jury demand, I think the court automatically goes about sort of sending out the little things in the mail and impaneling, or at least preparing the jury to be impaneled. And that process, I believe, is called voir dire. I think that's how it's pronounced. It basically is a process where the attorneys, and you, if you're representing yourself, get to sort of interview the potential jurors or the prospective jurors and disqualify the ones that you don't think would be a good fit based on the law. The law is going to list out what you can use to disqualify a juror. You can also use peremptory challenges. That will allow you to just say, I don't want this juror, and not have to really give a reason. You can just, if you have some concerns and you can't disqualify the juror under the law, you can use one of your peremptory challenges to just disqualify the juror that way. Unlike peremptory challenge of judge, which I have a separate video on, the peremptory challenge of a juror does have some limitations. I believe that your opponent, the attorney, on the other side can argue that you are, I know one example is racist. If you're using peremptory challenges like on black jurors only, just to get rid of all the black jurors, I believe that there's some case law out there that allows them to confront you, and the judge has to like conduct some analysis to determine whether or not you're using the peremptory challenge in a way that is prejudicial in some way against someone's religion or race or something like that. Again, I'm just letting you know these things exist, that these things have to be looked into. I'm not going into any specifics because all 50 states are going to have a wealth of case law on all of this, and that situation is going to change. It's going to ebb and flow. So you just have to do your own research. Hopefully, I'm letting people know about things that are important. When it comes to having a jury, actually impaneled and in the courtroom, the techniques used to argue the case in front of them is very different than using whatever techniques you would use to argue your case in front of a judge. Jurors are different. They're not legal experts. You have to approach it differently. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I declined to use a jury trial because of my concern that this would advantage more. This would advantage my opponent's attorney more than it would advantage me. It was going to create more complexity, and I thought it would do more harm than good. I didn't think it was going to be helpful to me. Another couple of things that I want to mention is you need to learn about motions in limine. I may do a separate video on that. When it comes to just having a judge, you don't have to worry about the judge becoming... I'm saying this... this is supposed to be the case. It's supposed to be that a judge is less likely to be biased about certain information coming across than a jury is. Now, I know there's people who already think there's all kinds of bias that's being shown by the judges, but the purpose of the motion in limine is that you can have the court consider something outside the presence of the jury. And the reason for that is there may be certain issues that if the jury was there and present, they may become affected by whatever argument you're giving. Usually it's done to suppress evidence and things like that. A jury, if they were able to watch you suppress certain evidence like documents and videos, the jury might think, well, I don't like that. That's not right. We should be able to see that, and then rule against you. So they have these motions in limine that allow you to ask the court to consider certain things outside the presence of the jury. And they will basically move them away into the little back room, and then you can argue it, and then they'll bring them back in afterwards after the judge's ruling is made. And the whole purpose behind that is that the judge can hear all kinds of potentially prejudicial information and be able to sort of understand and set that aside and not hold it against you, whereas the jury can't. Again, I'm going to do a separate video on motions in limine. And the last thing you'll probably want to look into is polling the jury. Whether you win or lose, I'm not sure. I think it might be only the losing attorney that polls the jury, but it might be both. You can poll the jury after they've rendered their verdict, and I'm not even fully sure what this process involves, but I do believe that it's an opportunity to check with each juror to see if they did actually vote the way that the foreman, is that what he's called? I think the leader of the jury is called the foreman, to see if that's actually how they voted. And you may be able to also pull them on a few other little details. And the purpose of pulling the jury, I believe, has to do with any kind of appeal that gets filed. There are certain things that are waived if you don't pull the jury and ask certain questions. The last thing I guess I was going to mention, that was the last thing, but here's another one, is the jury can ask questions sometimes in some situations. Again, this is not something that I'm going to do I'm not going to spend any time on this. I'm just letting people know that that's a thing. and to look into it. If you're going to use a jury, figure out how jury questions work. That's the whole point of this video. From somebody who did a little bit of research and decided to not use a jury, the best I can do is let you know what I learned, and if you want to really look into it carefully, take all of the concepts that I just brought up in this video and look into it carefully. Do your research. Don't just go off of what people say. Even me. So I'm pretty sure that that covers everything when it comes to juries, and with that, I will see you guys next time.